Hi guys, my name is Roger, and ever since I was a teenager, I've always wanted to build my own car. I started this channel to see if an average person, like me, can design and build their own mid-engine car. If you like what you see here in my videos, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you know someone who you think might be interested in my videos, please share the videos with them. I'll be adding a new video every week, and with that out of the way, let's get started with this week's video. I know you can't really see what I'm doing back here, and even if you could, you probably wouldn't be able to understand just by the video. But what I'm doing is trying to find the exact location of the engine. Right now, just the center line. So what I did was bolt this wooden fixture to the back of the engine that I made several months ago. And this is made to find the exact center line of the car so I can place the engine on that center line. And I bolted this to the engine, found the center line, lowered the weight down on top of some spacer blocks to what I think is the correct height, at least for now. And then I have bolted this adapter plate back on the engine, and just to verify that with the adapter on here that it looks like the center line also. I just want to make sure that these weren't staggered off center, and I could kind of use these for a reference. But with my template showing this to be center line, you can see here that this ear just barely touches actually the bevel or the chamfer. Actually, it's a fillet, I guess, is where the vertical tube here starts, right on the edge of that fillet. And the same thing over here. So everything agrees that this is the center line, and I can either use my wooden template or this aluminum adapter plate to judge center line, and everything will be correct, I believe. Now I've just got to worry about the engine front and rear location and up and down location, and I'm almost touching here at the bottom, so I may still be a tiny bit low, but I don't want it very high off that corner. I just want it just above touching, so I'll look at that a little closer in a minute. But next thing I want to do is get the transaxle over here and try to get it on the hoist and insert it in here and butt it up against this adapter plate and see if it looks like it's got the correct clearance front to back for the axles to miss this tube. So I want to get a front to back reference on the engine, try to get that correct. So once I have the center line, the front to back reference, then it'll be a matter of just getting the up and down correct. And there's a couple of clearance issues here possibly, and here I'm almost positive, so look at those also. I may have to make some modifications of these tubes, but trying to get an exact location first so I'll know what kind of interference I have. So I guess let's get the transaxle moved over here and try to lift it up inside the car and get a general look, see what it's going to look like. Okay, well, we have the transaxle in here at almost the correct position. It is touching here on the back on this bar. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it is touching here. It's sitting on it, so it won't quite go low enough. I'm going to cut a piece out of this tube and weld in a lower piece, a dip, a trough, a valley, whatever you want to call it, for clearance here. The clearance I was worried about here for the starter, there's plenty of clearance here. I thought that might have some interference, but it doesn't. It has lots of clearance. I'm not worried about that. Everything still needs to shift slightly forward. I don't have enough room here to weld in my mounts, but wanted to start here and take a look at it. The only thing that I didn't anticipate is the entire transaxle is shifted off to the right hand side quite a bit. Looks to be maybe 2 to 3 inches, which doesn't cause any issues, but it does create a tight spot here. I have plenty of clearance right now, but as this shifts forward some and down some, it may run into an issue touching this tube. And if I can't position it where it doesn't interfere, I'll cut and remove a little bit of that tube and weld a plate on top of it. It's just going to touch the corner there. It wouldn't be much that I'd need to remove. But other than that, I think this is going to work. I need to pull this transaxle back out, make the modifications to the frame, and then start getting the exact engine position so I can modify the engine mounts and the transaxle mounts. So I guess let's get moving on those things. Well, it looks like I have a major operation going on here. This is like open heart surgery. But let me show you what I'm working on here. I got the engine pulled out and part of the rear suspension pulled out of the way so I could get to these brackets and weld them in. This is what I've come up with. These 1/4 inch thick aluminum brackets are welded into place, and they're welded as far around as I can get them in as many places. They're pretty solid. And there's this is a 1-inch plate. There's a 1 1/4 inch ID in these mounting brackets. There are some Delrin bushings going inside the holes that stick out and have an 1/8 of an inch flange on each side, so there'll be a little bit of a gap left for me to shim and get this in exactly the right position forward and backward with shims. But I will make some kind of template to set on the frame and inside here for this aluminum adapter plate to sit on and locate left and right. And once I know the exact location, then I'll mark the holes and transfer the holes, and there'll be a 3/8 of an inch hole all the way through for a bolt on both sides. But this is what these mounting brackets look like. And I'd say they're about halfway done. We'll make some shims and get the holes drilled and bolt everything together. We'll be getting close. And then once this is in place correctly, I can level the engine and know the exact height of the engine mounts, which I know approximately, but I'll level them. And what I'm doing is I'm sitting the engine down on shims. I have this taped into position, and I am siding across the top of this and leveling it with the bottom of the valve covers here. This is parallel to the bottom of the engine, so I can shim it and tell it when it is parallel to the frame rails, and that's the goal. So the height of this is critical so it doesn't bump the frames. So once this is in place and then the engine is level, then everything else just kind of works itself out. So I'll continue to take some careful measurements, make sure I'm on my center line. But other than that, I think we are headed in the right direction, and let's continue working on this. I wanted to show you what I did here. I put the transaxle in the car just to see how it lined up and how the clearances and everything looked now that the engine is in place. And what I did was made some wooden blocks and shimmed this engine up. You can actually still see one of the blocks under here, but I cut the blocks the correct height and leveled the engine with the frame. And came in here and shimmed with some 1/8 inch rubber between the frame and this adapter plate with all these wooden blocks in place, and then drilled the holes for the 3/8 bolts. And I have this adapter plate, I have a bolt drop through the hole on both sides. That one may be hard to see, it's in the shadow, but there's a bolt in both sides. The engine is exactly where it needs to locate, everything aligned correctly. I put the transaxle in and started bolting it in. It's not bolted up completely tight because I know you can't see it, but the bell housing here on the transaxle is touching this mounting bracket just barely, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So I'm gonna have to take and grind that material away just a little for clearance. And then I'll touch here, which I was thinking I probably would. So I'll need to remove a little bit of material from that vertical tube and weld a cap back over the hole. So once those two things are done, this transaxle will drop down in there where it should locate and fit fine. You can see here where I notched for clearance underneath the back of the transaxle in this cross tube. Once that transaxle lowers down, it should have about 1/8 of an inch clearance. So all of that looks good. And so far with this, I'm happy. I'm still waiting on the metal to come in to make the engine mounts, which will be the next thing that we do. And then once the engine mounts are complete, I'll make some mounts that bolt here to the transaxle and come up and bolt here to these frame sides on both sides. And they will be adjustable tubes with rod ends on both ends, so I can adjust the back end of the transaxle and get it exactly where it needs to be and tension those rods. And that should hold the transaxle in place. Everything else looks good. I think we're okay on clearances everywhere. And I think that's going to be about it for this week's video. And I'll see you guys again in 1 week where we finish up mounting this transaxle and motor back in the car.